Here's something almost nobody tells you in a 12-minute office visit. Two people can eat the exact same bowl of lentil soup tonight, and tomorrow morning one of them will see their fasting number drop by 20 or 30 points, while the other barely moves the needle at all. Same food, completely different result, and the reason has almost nothing to do with the lentils themselves. It has to do with what came before them on the plate, what came after them on the clock, and a handful of small additions almost nobody talks about. Stick with me to the end, because I'm going to walk you through exactly what makes that difference. And by the time we're done, you'll have a simple plan you can start tonight before you even go to bed. Quick favor before we get into it. If you want more videos like this one, hit subscribe, give this a like, and leave a comment with your fasting number from this morning. I genuinely read these, and they shape what I cover next for this audience.vv. And because this matters to me, let me say it plainly up front. Everything in this video is for educational purposes only. It is not medical advice, and it is not a replacement for your own doctor, especially if you are already taking insulin or a medication for blood sugar. Think of this as a list to bring to your next appointment, not a reason to change a prescription on your own. With that said, let's get into it. My name is Dr. Franklin, and to understand why some foods move your blood sugar and others don't, you first have to understand one hormone, insulin. Picture insulin as a delivery key. Glucose, the sugar in your blood, is cargo waiting to get off the truck and into the warehouse, which is your muscle and your fat tissue. Insulin is the key that unlocks the warehouse door. Now, if that door has been forced open too hard, too fast for too many years, the lock starts to strip. The key still turns, but the door barely budges. Your pancreas senses the cargo backing up outside, and does the only thing it knows how to do. It cuts more keys flooding your bloodstream with insulin just to get a fraction of that sugar where it belongs. That is insulin resistance. It is the real story behind a high fasting number, not just eating too much sugar in some vague sense. So every single thing I show you today does one of three jobs. It slows the truck down so cargo doesn't arrive all at once. It helps repair the lock itself, or it clears the rust around the door so the key can turn freely again. Now, you might be wondering why cutting carbohydrates out entirely hasn't already solved this for you or for someone you know who's tried it. Here's the honest answer. Carbohydrate restriction works in the short term because it removes the cargo, so there's nothing for the truck to deliver, but it doesn't repair the lock. The moment carbohydrate comes back into the picture, even in a modest amount, the same stripped lock is still sitting there, and the spike comes right back. That's why so many people white-knuckle a low-carb diet for months, see their numbers improve, then slip at one holiday dinner and watch their fasting number jump right back to where it started. It isn't a failure of willpower. It's because the underlying lock was never actually fixed. Everything I'm about to show you targets the lock itself, not just the cargo, which is why the results tend to hold even when life happens and a carbohydrate sneaks back onto the plate. Here's the part most lists like this one skip entirely. It is not only what's on your plate, it is the order things hit your stomach and what you do in the hour after you eat. So, before we even get to specific foods, I want to give you the single highest leverage change I know, and it costs nothing. Eat your vegetables and your protein first and save the starch or the carbohydrate for last. When carbohydrate hits an empty stomach, it digests fast and floods your blood with glucose all at once. But when protein and fiber go in first, they form a kind of mesh in your stomach. The carbohydrate that follows gets trapped in that mesh and releases slowly instead of all at once. Researchers at Weill Cornell measured this directly and found that simply changing the order of the same meal, vegetables and protein first, starch last, cut the after-meal blood sugar spike dramatically without removing a single calorie or a single carbohydrate. Tonight, before you even think about which foods to add, just try this. Same dinner you were already planning. Eat the salad and the chicken first. Eat the rice or the bread last. That single habit is worth more than half the things people buy at the pharmacy hoping for a quick fix. Before we begin, take a second and tell me your name and where you're tuning in from. I go through the comments and I genuinely want to know who I'm speaking to and supporting here. Now let's build on that with the foods themselves, because the right ones make that mesh even stronger. Number 1 is ground flaxseed. Whole flaxseed passes through you mostly undigested, so it has to be ground for your body to actually use it. Once it's ground, you get two things working together: a soluble fiber that swells into that same mesh-like gel we just talked about, and a plant compound called a lignin that appears to improve how sensitive your cells are to insulin. A tablespoon of ground flaxseed has almost no effect on its own, but stirred into oatmeal, yogurt, or a smoothie right before a carbohydrate-heavy meal, it blunts the spike that would otherwise follow. Keep it in the fridge once it's ground, because the healthy fats inside go rancid quickly at room temperature. 1 to 2 tablespoons a day mixed into something you're already eating is plenty. A coffee grinder set aside just for this job works well, or buy it pre-ground in a small bag and finish it within a few weeks rather than letting it sit in the pantry for months. Number 2 is plain Greek yogurt, and the timing matters more than the food itself. Greek yogurt is strained, so it carries roughly double the protein of regular yogurt in the same serving with very little carbohydrate. Eaten at breakfast, that protein load does something doctors call the second meal effect. It doesn't just steady your blood sugar for the next hour, it steadies it all the way through lunch because your body spends the morning digesting protein slowly instead of riding a sugar wave up and down. Choose the plain, unsweetened kind. The flavored cups at the grocery store often carry more sugar per serving than a candy bar, and that defeats the entire purpose. Half a cup to a full cup at breakfast with a small handful of berries for sweetness is a strong way to open the day. If the tartness of plain yogurt takes getting used to, a few drops of stevia or a sprinkle of cinnamon, which we'll get to in a moment, smooths it out without adding the sugar back in. If you're still here with me and finding this helpful, take a moment to type 2 in the comments. It lets me know you're watching and getting value from this. Number 3 is berries, and I mean them specifically as a swap, not an addition. If you already eat fruit in the morning, this is one of the easiest changes on this whole list. Swap a banana or a cup of grapes for a half cup of blueberries, blackberries, or raspberries. Berries carry roughly a third of the sugar load of most other fruit, but they're rich in compounds called anthocyanins, the same pigments that give them their color. And these compounds have been shown to improve how efficiently your muscle cells pull glucose out of the blood. You are not giving up fruit, you are choosing the fruit that works with you instead of against you. Frozen berries work just as well as fresh and tend to be far cheaper year-round, so don't feel like this one requires a trip to a specialty store. Number 4 is barley, and this is the swap I give patients who feel like they could never give up rice or potatoes. Barley contains a soluble fiber called beta-glucan, and gram for gram, it carries more of it than oats. That fiber forms a thick gel in your gut that slows carbohydrate absorption dramatically, and a number of clinical studies have shown that replacing white rice or potato with barley at a single meal lowers the blood sugar response to that meal by a meaningful margin, sometimes by close to a third. Cook it the same way you'd cook rice. It has a chewy, nutty texture that holds up well in a soup, a side dish, or even a cold salad with some olive oil and lemon. If you've never cooked it before, look for the quick cooking or pearled variety at the store. It cuts the cooking time down to around 15 minutes and behaves almost exactly like rice in any recipe you already know. And if you've made it this far and you're getting value from this, type the number 4 in the comments. It's a simple way to let me know you're here and following along. Number 5 is pumpkin seeds, and this one surprises people because they expect a vegetable, not a seed. Pumpkin seeds are one of the richest food sources of magnesium you can buy at a regular grocery store, and magnesium is not optional here. It is a required mineral for the insulin receptor to function at all. Years of research have linked low magnesium levels directly to worsening insulin resistance, and a great many older adults are quietly low in it without ever being tested. A small handful, about a quarter cup raw or dry roasted, a few times a week covers a meaningful share of what your body needs. Sprinkle them on a salad, on soup, or eat them on their own as a snack instead of crackers. If you take a blood pressure medication as well, this is a particularly good one to ask your doctor about since magnesium tends to support healthy blood pressure right alongside its role in insulin sensitivity. Number 6 is apple cider vinegar, and I'll keep this one short because you may have already heard of it, but I want to give you the specific situation where it earns its keep. The active ingredient is acetic acid, and it slows your stomach from emptying while helping your muscles pull glucose out of your blood for fuel. Where this becomes genuinely useful is at the meal you can't fully control, the holiday dinner, the restaurant order, the slice of cake at a birthday party. 1 tablespoon always diluted in a full glass of water 15 minutes before that meal takes the edge off a spike you know is coming. Never drink it undiluted. The acid is hard on your teeth and your throat, and if you're already on a blood sugar medication, mention this to your doctor first, because the two together can drop your sugar lower and faster than either one alone. A straw can help protect your enamel if you find yourself using this one regularly. If this is the kind of information nobody ever told you before, hit subscribe right now because there is a lot more where that came from. And trust me, what comes next you need to hear. Number 7 is True Ceylon Cinnamon, not the cassia cinnamon most stores stock by default. Cassia carries a compound that's hard on the liver in large daily amounts, while Ceylon, sometimes labeled true cinnamon, is gentler and safer for daily use. The polyphenols in cinnamon behave a little like insulin themselves, helping your receptors grip glucose more tightly. A quarter teaspoon stirred into coffee, oatmeal, or a smoothie paired with a carbohydrate meal is exactly when you want those receptors working hardest. Before we get to the last 3, and these last 3 are honestly the ones I think get overlooked the most, let me ask you something in the comments. Of everything so far, which one feels the most doable for you this week? The eating order, the walk, or the bedtime snack? I read these and I genuinely use them to decide what to cover next. All right, let's finish the list. Number 8, and this is the one I wish more people knew, is the 10-minute walk after you eat. Not before, after. When you walk, your working muscles can pull glucose directly out of your bloodstream without needing nearly as much insulin to do it, almost like opening a side door into the warehouse that doesn't require the same key at all. Research presented through diabetes prevention programs has found that a short walk in the half hour after a meal lowers the blood sugar spike from that meal more effectively than a longer walk taken at some other point in the day. You don't need a gym, you don't need special shoes. 10 minutes around the block or even pacing your kitchen and living room while you tidy up, done consistently after your biggest meal of the day, is one of the most powerful tools on this entire list. And it's completely free. If walking outside isn't an option for you because of weather, joints, or mobility, even standing and doing light chores instead of sitting down right after eating captures part of the same benefit since it's the muscle activity itself that pulls the glucose out of your blood. Number 9, and this is the one almost nobody addresses in these videos, is a small protein snack before bed. A great many of you have told me the same strange thing, that your highest reading of the entire day shows up first thing in the morning before you've eaten a single bite. Part of what's happening overnight is your liver releasing stored sugar while you sleep, and an empty stomach overnight can actually push that release higher in someone whose insulin resistance is more advanced. A small amount of slow protein before bed, a half cup of plain cottage cheese, or a hard-boiled egg gives your body something steady to draw on through the night instead of leaning so hard on that liver release. This isn't a fix for everyone. Livers behave differently from person to person, but it's worth testing for a week with your own glucose meter and seeing what your morning number does. Keep the portion small. This is meant to be a steadying snack, not a second dinner, and pairing it with a few of those pumpkin seeds we just talked about is an easy way to combine 2 of these strategies into one bedtime habit. Number 10 is the one that ties every single thing on this list together, and it's simply this: stack them. None of these 9 changes need to happen all at once, and none of them need to be permanent overnight. Add one a week. The order: first, then flaxseed, then the post-meal walk, then the bedtime snack. By the time you've layered in 3 or 4 of these, you're not fighting your blood sugar anymore. You're working with a body that's finally getting the support it needed all along. Most of the patients I've watched succeed long-term didn't do it by overhauling everything in one weekend. They picked the single easiest change, lived with it until it felt automatic, usually about a week or 2, and then added the next one on top of it. That slow stacking is exactly why the results tend to stick instead of fading after a month, the way a lot of crash diets do. If someone in your life is fighting their numbers too, a parent, a sibling, a friend at church, send them this video. This is the kind of thing nobody sits people down and actually explains. Let me tell you about a patient I'll call Harold, 68 years old, retired from 30 years of driving a delivery route, and his fasting numbers had been creeping up for 3 years straight, sitting around 165 by the time he came to see me. He was proud, and he didn't want to add a second medication if he didn't have to, partly because he'd watched his own brother end up on 4 different prescriptions over the years, and felt like he was watching his future play out in front of him. We didn't touch his medication that first visit. We changed his breakfast to Greek yogurt and berries instead of his usual toast and jam. We had him eat his vegetables first at dinner and his potatoes last. We added a 10-minute walk after that same dinner, which he ended up doing with his dog every night, rain or shine, because the dog made sure he didn't skip it. We swapped his white rice for barley twice a week, and we gave him a hard-boiled egg before bed on the nights his number had run high that morning. Within 10 days, his fasting numbers had dropped into the 130s. Within 4 months, working closely with his own physician, his doctor was able to lower his existing medication dose, not add to it. A year later, at his routine checkup, his numbers were still holding steady. Harold didn't starve himself for a single day. He ate more food, just food that was finally working with his body instead of against it. Here's why all of this works together instead of in isolation. The eating order and the fiber-rich foods slow the truck down so the cargo never arrives all at once. The post-meal walk opens a side door that doesn't even need the key. The magnesium and the polyphenols in cinnamon help repair the lock itself, so the insulin you already have starts working harder for you. Do this meal after meal, day after day, and the door that stopped opening on the first knock slowly starts opening again on its own. Now, before I give you tonight's plan, I want to draw one clear line, because this matters. If you are on insulin or an older class of blood sugar medication called a sulfonylurea, these changes can lower your sugar quickly enough that your current dose becomes too strong, and that can drop you into a low blood sugar episode, which is genuinely dangerous. Make these changes with your doctor watching your numbers alongside you, and let your doctor walk your medication dose down as your body improves. Please don't stop or adjust any prescription on your own. Bring this list to your next appointment instead, and ask what fits for you specifically. The goal here was never to replace your doctor. It was to give you something useful to bring into that conversation, so the two of you can decide together what makes sense for your particular situation. So, here's what to actually do tonight. 5 simple steps. 1. At your very next meal, eat the vegetables and the protein first, and save the starch for last, even if it's the exact same plate of food you were already planning. 2. Tomorrow morning, swap your usual breakfast for plain Greek yogurt with a half cup of berries on top. 3. After your largest meal of the day, take a 10-minute walk, even if it's just around your own block. 4. Buy true Ceylon cinnamon, not cassia, and start with a 1/4 teaspoon a day in your coffee or oatmeal. 5. If your mornings have been running high, try a small protein snack before bed for 1 week, and watch what your fasting number does. You are not removing the meals you love. You are simply adding the pieces that were missing, one small change at a time, until your body starts doing the heavy lifting on its own again. Now, everything we covered today works because of what's actually on your plate, but a good number of you eat foods every single day that are marketed as healthy, and they are quietly working against everything we just talked about. I made a video that walks through the 5 so-called health foods that are secretly spiking blood sugar the most, and most people have at least 2 of them in their kitchen right now. I'll put it right here on the screen. Go watch that one next, and I'll see you there.